fuck you, Filoni. Just fuck you. You dirty stinking plagiarist. Copying and pasting an original work to brush it under the rug and replace it with your own. Damn you. Yeah, so I'm still pretty pissed about Filoni's blatant act of EU bashing here. There's no way a supposed hardcore Star Wars nerd would have named his upcoming show Tales of the Jedi, because they would have realized there was already a story called that, and that they should respect it. I made a video breaking down and reviewing the true Tales of the Jedi series, because the Star Wars fanbase needs to know about the original version. I also find it disrespectful because the true creator Tom Veitch has passed away, and Filoni comes by and tries to brush his work under the rug. We all know that when people think of Tales of the Jedi, they will think of Filoni's show, and the original and superior work will be left as a footnote. Perhaps if the KOTOR remake is ever made, we will hear one last time about Ulic, Nomi, and Exar Kun, and that'll be it. And given the Disney canon page for such characters are fucking empty, I doubt they will be done any justice. I read the entirety of Tales of the Jedi, and I knew someone with the skill set of Filoni wouldn't be able to match or top it. It's been argued that since the Filoniverse version are shorts, and the comics are a fleshed out, continuing story that went for multiple arcs, that's a bad idea to compare them. To those who say that, that is missing the point of why they're being compared. Filoni clearly wanted to brush the OG story under the rug, and making the two way different from each other was his way of doing so. It may be just a coincidence, but I think not. Making this a different medium to the comics, and not just because it's a TV series of shorts for a streaming service, he could hide comparisons, especially since the comics are never referenced ever in this show. Seriously, now I'm not against another prequel era story, but you should have called it something else. Something like Chronicles of the Jedi or Jedi Chronicles. I came up with those two off the top of my head. I remember when Tales of the Jedi was first leaked. People thought it would be an adaptation of the comics in some way. The stories of Ulic Qel-Droma, Nomi Sunrider, and Exar Kun deserved more attention. But of course, hope is futile at this point. I mean, guys, you're remaking Knights of the Old Republic. You should have used the opportunity to give us the real Tales of the Jedi, but instead it's used to establish Ahsoka and Count Dooku. Okay, the latter I don't actually have a problem with, but Ahsoka? Really? She's the most overrated and oversaturated character in the franchise. Filoni's flagship character was nothing more than a Star Wars afterthought. One that retconned the expanded universe, one that didn't belong in the films, and definitely one that should have died by now. My buddy Iron Inquisitor says Malachor should have been her grave, and to that I say nada. She should have died in Season 5 of the Clone Wars at most. And that's ignoring the expanded universe. Ahsoka realistically could have been delegated to one arc. That's it. Plus we've got an Ahsoka spin-off show. Don't you think it was good to take some time away from her? Of course not. Ahsoka's gotta be in everything and narrowly avoid being in the films because reasons. And damn, is Ahsoka's presence in all of this so out of place? So the series is half and half with Ahsoka and Count Dooku. It's kind of weird that they would only have two prominent Jedi, especially when the first episode doesn't even have Jedi in it. The first episode, titled Life and Death, focuses on Ahsoka's infancy and growing up on Chile before being taken as a Jedi. When I saw this episode, I was thinking about how much Filoni wanted to showcase Ahsoka's entire life story. I wouldn't be surprised if Ahsoka survives past the rise of Skywalker and her calling out to Rey was across the galaxy. Because to me it seems that Ahsoka is eternal at this point. Anyways, Ahsoka is born, and I heavily suspect that the baby noises are stock sound effects. The reason why is because one of Ahsoka's gurgles I heard in that creepy PlayStation 3 commercial. It sounded eerily similar to me. Anyways, it skips to a year later, where Ahsoka is going on a hunting trip with her mother, Pav T. Yeah, they're going on a hunting trip. You're just gonna show Ahsoka how to kill animals. Nice one, Mum. Anyways, this leads to quite an uneventful sequence, where Pav T just does shit in the wilderness. including shooting a wild animal and showcasing it to Ahsoka. I don't think it's really appropriate to do this, but this all leads to a more vicious wild animal ambushing the two, and the wild animal takes Ahsoka. Ahsoka is about to be eaten in the animal's habitat of sorts when she uses beast control or something without any training in the Force and rides the animal back, with the Elder proclaiming that Ahsoka is Jedi. What? I highly suspect that line was meant for the trailer, because in context that doesn't make any sense. I lost my sanity when this happened. I remember playing KOTOR 2 and never being able to tame the beast on Duxon. And here Ahsoka does it with barely any effort. I guess talent without training doesn't apply to Ahsoka. I couldn't even see the point to the story. I guess the point was that Ahsoka was Force sensitive. Yeah, we know, Filoni. This episode was rather dull. It doesn't go anywhere and the ending was pointless. It feels like another slice of life story. A more interesting conflict and premise would have been nice. I'm not going to complain that it's a short, but I'm going to point out that the Clone Wars struggled a lot with pacing because they needed more time. Here, I feel the same should have been the case. Anyways, next episode. Next we've got something more appealing. Count Dooku and Qui-Gon Jinn going into a poverty-stricken town. They go into a bar and a woman instantly reveals that her, along with a lot of the others in town, kidnaps the person they're looking for, the son of a senator. Since this episode is on a quick time span, they bring the Jedi to the kidnapped and the senator shows up prematurely. I guess the whole point of this episode is to show the corruption within the Republic and stuff. We don't have a lot of time to get into it. The Senator's exploits mostly consists of leading his system's poorer regions into poverty. It's not really shown or explained why he has done this. We can only infer that he's lazy or greedy, but even then it's unspecified. Dooku and Qui-Gon side with the kidnappers, as they wanted to put food on their plate. Dooku, without prompting, pushes the Senator's guards away and force chokes the Senator. So what does Qui-Gon do? He goes back inside and tells his son to stop his master, and then they go back inside and talk to Dooku. It seems to me like they were wasting time. Qui-Gon couldn't afford to go back inside. If he was going to prevent the Senator being killed, he had to do it now. So yeah, this entire episode is pretty stupid. I think it was a mistake making shorts out of stories like this. This stuff obviously needed more time. Next episode, Mace Windu and Count Dooku investigate a murder on a Jedi, and during the investigation, the guards accompany the Jedi at the murder site and turn out to be the ones that killed the Jedi. For similar reasons as last time, they wanted to change the corrupt Senate. This all leads to them being locked up and the funeral for the Jedi happens. Barely anything happened in this episode. So far, the series is proving to be pretty dull and empty. I'm getting nothing out of these episodes. If we go on to the next one, it's Count Dooku erasing Kamino from the archives. So he was the one who did that. We also see Yaddle's one and only prominent role in Disney canon ever. Yaddle has a really out-of-place voice. I was curious on how she would sound and I'm disappointed. Dooku speaks to Qui-Gon briefly, and then it skips to after the Phantom Menace happens, and tries to explain why Dooku wasn't at Qui-Gon's funeral. I think. I'm not sure. It gives such poor reasoning. And Dooku also decides to leave. And then this episode goes completely off the rails when it recontextualizes that Dooku served Sidious before Qui-Gon's death. His reaction to Qui-Gon's death is mild annoyance, which is so fucking stupid. In the expanded universe, Dooku's turn to the dark side was because of Qui-Gon's death. Dooku was so distraught over his apprentice's death and was stricken by grief. By recontextualizing it to this, it just doesn't work, especially how it's executed. Sidious is breaking the rule of two. I criticize the Darth Plagueis novel for doing the same, so I'm not being biased here. Yaddle follows Dooku to the hiding place and confronts him, and they have a short duel that predictably ends in Yaddle's death, as Dooku strikes her down. So far, this is the best episode, but that's not saying much. I thought it was interesting that they used Yaddle, and I was like, about fucking time. So I'll give the episode that. Since this is the end of the Dooku trilogy, I have to say it's underwhelming. It's random parts of Dooku's life, all with the same theme, I guess, but it's really dull and makes you feel empty. Next, we've got Ahsoka shit to cap things off. I don't know why the episodes are ordered the way they were, but whatever. The next episode concerns Anakin's training drills. After Ahsoka masters the Jedi training, Anakin decides to give her a real test. A harsh drill by clones shooting at her, which is conveniently explained to be the thing that saved her life in the Clone Wars Season 7. Thanks, didn't ask. We don't even get to see her complete the test successfully. It just cuts to that moment before the ultimate climax of Season 7. We already know Anakin was a hardened mentor who got Ahsoka to learn by doing in the most direct sense. What the hell was the point of this short? Then to finalize the series, we've got Resolve, which of course crams Ahsoka into the end of Revenge of the Sith. Again, the suspension of disbelief has been pushed too hard long beforehand, and this just makes me think, oh my god, Filoni, what the hell is wrong with you? Bail Organa spots Ahsoka on the opposite side of the crowd, when she was definitely not there beforehand, because she was little more than a Star Wars afterthought. He speaks to Ahsoka and offers her a place in the early rebellion. She isn't interested, and so she proceeds to become a farmer in some offhand land in the middle of nowhere. Of course, during a day on the job, a guy is about to be toppled by hay, but Ahsoka uses the Force to stop him from being toppled by hay? Yeah, you're gonna have to come up with a more interesting instigator than that, Filoni. This obviously leads to Ahsoka being ratted out as a Jedi. The guy who's about to rat her out to the Empire even says, "May the Force be with you," before she goes out. Then of course the moment from the trailer, with an Inquisitor showing up and killing everybody, and the guy who ratted out Ahsoka made the biggest mistake of his life. Ahsoka shows up and easily overpowers and kills the Inquisitor, because remember the runtime. So then Ahsoka of course accepts the help Bail Organa offered, and presumably becomes a key member in the Rebel Alliance, like I heard she did in Star Wars Rebels. One thing that kind of came to mind though, is why Ahsoka didn't know Vader was Anakin until Rebels. I don't think Bail wouldn't have been told Vader's identity by Yoda and Obi-Wan, but we saw how that turned out. As well as this, why was Obi-Wan the only person who could save Leia? Yeah, Disney canon is rather inconsistent and nonsensical, isn't it? Also, I just looked at Wikipedia, and they contradicted the Ahsoka novel again. It says in the book, Bail learned Ahsoka was alive a year after Revenge of the Sith, rather than during the end of the movie. Another classic Filoniverse retcon for a work that is literally about his bitch. I think it's safe to say that the Ahsoka novel should be disregarded outright now. You see, this is why I don't read the Disney canon novels. It's because they'll be retconned when Filoni happens. The High Republic authors better pray to Jesus that Filoni doesn't decide to make his own High Republic. So yeah, Tales of the Jedi Filoniverse knockoff edition was an utter disaster. I hated it. It was dull and empty, it's got numerous continuity issues, no thanks to Dave Filoni, and on top of that, it fails to match or top the original comics. If you're going to replace the comics, you better have something pretty fucking incredible to replace it with, and well, this ain't it. The naming of this show was a spit in the face to these comics. Filoni proves time and time again that he's one of the worst Star Wars writers ever, plastering Ahsoka on everything and having little to no supervision doing so. This show's reception, from what I've seen, is overpraised mediocrity from people who have never read a single EU book. This show will further discourage people from reading the comics that this show stole the name from. I just hate the guts of these people. Filoni has really gotten carried away with what he's doing. He can't even keep Disney canon consistent. He was the one who wrote a passage in the first Disney canon novel, A New Dawn, where he says that for the first time, all Star Wars content will be connected. Look how poorly that aged. Filoni is the franchise destroyer, not its savior. I saw a video speculating whether or not the Ahsoka series would retcon the sequel trilogy, using the bullshit World Between Worlds time travel crap for a theory about how Ahsoka would prevent the sequels from happening. This is all extremely pathetic. Star Wars is at an extremely low bar now. Fuck Filoni, fuck Ahsoka, fuck the Chinese bootleg Tales of the Jedi, fuck everything from Disney. I'm JJ Plagiarisms. And until next time, what are Swordsman Mystery Boxes?